Hey, y'all made it? How does it look over there?
That might be out of my
That might
budget.
be out of my budget.
Is it expensive?
How much is it?
How much is it?
What do they eat?
Do they have vegan options?
I don't know. I can't eat what they eat over there.
What is there to do there?
Man, I heard that place is boring.
I heard that place is boring.
Is it even safe over there?
Is it even safe
Is that
over
place
there?
even safe?
But is it safe for
Is it even
single
safe
women?
over there? You know they be killing people.
What should I pack?
I don't know.
I heard the rooms are small and they don't even have AC.
I don't know where to begin to plan a trip.
Is there a language barrier?
Man, I don't know.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our first episode. My name is Brandy, and I'm from Adel, Georgia. First up is Cape Town, South Africa.
As a kid, I was inundated and submerged in blackness. Kente cloth lined all our local malls and leather African pendants at every kiosk. I was always told that Africa was beautiful. You gotta go home and see it. It's nothing like it anywhere else in the world. So in search of Wakanda, I ended up in the mother city. There is so much depth to this place, I can't even begin to describe it. Founded quote unquote in 1652 by Jan van Riebeeck of the Dutch East India Company. The natives basically got the Christopher Columbus treatment. So you will notice a lot of Dutch architecture influence around the city. You will also see the scars of apartheid everywhere you turn, as several black South Africans are still struggling to find equal economic footing. Therein lies these congruent yet unharmonious perspectives. Nestled below one of the Earth's 7 natural wonders are picturesque beaches, unblemished nature reserves, and majestic gardens. Yet when I look around, I didn't see anyone that looked like us. This land that I have been told is native now just seems foreign. I sat down with a good friend to discuss our experiences from Cape Town and the impact that it left on our lives. Please check it out. Thanks for coming. Nice to have you here.
Glad to be here.
So the big thing about this particular episode, and the reason why it's the first one, is because this one kind of triggered and sparked everything, Cape Town. When I was doing the research for it, I had so many different I didn't know what to expect as far as going to Cape Town. I was just doing all this research, trying to figure it out. And I just got so many different kind of views on it. It was people talked about the crime. And then another set was like, man, it was the most lit place I've ever been,
yeah.
So, and I remember we had this conversation before, pretty much in church parking lot, just talking. And I was like, there we go. That's the person I need to have this conversation with.
Well, glad to be here.
So, what do you remember from your experience? What stood out to you?
Well, Cape Town, I will say, of all the places I have toured and visited over the last few years, Cape Town was by far my favorite. I loved Cape Town. I felt like it offered so much. It was so many things to see, so many different experiences. I think one of my highlights was actually being standing right outside the jail cell where Nelson Mandela was held for so many years. And just being there, it was like, wow, I'm really here. Like, this is the, famous, being on Robben Island and just being there and realizing that this is where Nelson Mandela spent so many years of his life, fighting for freedom and justice for the people of South Africa. So that to me, I think that would be the highlight, just being there. But it was so many other experiences that I really, truly enjoyed.
It's weird because I think it was just from a nature standpoint, it was the most beautiful place I've ever been
By
to in my
far.
life. Like everything, just the natural, nothing created. It wasn't anything manufactured like, oh, here's some pretty steps that are created. It was just everything was just so beautiful.
I felt like Cape Town when I came, I went to Cape Town. It was late September of 2015, and I stayed for. I went. It was Cape Town, and I also went to Johannesburg. I went to Cape Town first, and then Johannesburg after that. So I stayed in South Africa for roughly 2 weeks.
Hmm.
We spent most of that time in Cape Town. We stayed there for 7 days. I could have stayed much longer because I was like, this is the only place that I could think of where I felt like I learned so much history, culture. I'd seen, I had a chance to see like all different types of wildlife and animals. We did the safari.
Hmm.
We got a chance to see, we went to I think it was called I think it was called Hout Bay, where they had all the different seals. So you can go. We took a
Cape of
boat.
Good. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was like a boat we got on, and we
Okay.
went out there, and it was like nothing but we could see nothing but seals. And
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, and it was just so amazing just seeing all of that. And then we had a chance to drive along the Cape Peninsula. And
Hmm.
once we got to the end, we went to this one colony that was nothing. I think it's one of two in the entire world where it was nothing but penguins all over the place. I was like, that is so cool. I mean, and then we also toured like all these different wineries. I think I went to like 4 different wineries
Yeah.
during the time that I was in Cape Town. So I felt like Cape Town, and I went to also, I visited several townships in South Africa just to, to meet the people and to actually see, because I didn't want to see just go there and just do all the, popular places. I wanted to really get a feel for the culture and to mingle with some of the people who were natives of South Africa. So I felt like I got a chance to do all of that during my 7 days that I was there.
So one of the things that when I was doing my research, one of the things that stood out, there was a concern over crime. Did you see anything that concerned you or anything that
I know this may
frightened you?
sound weird to you, but crime never, it was never a concern of mine. My entire time in South Africa, I was never concerned about crime. Like, even when I was planning my trip, I mean, of course, you always hear that, things happen, but I take the approach when I go somewhere that crime happens everywhere,
So
even in the neighborhoods that we live in. So that was never a major concern of mine.
so here's the thing that I noticed from my little research. A lot they do have an issue with crime, but the reason the crime issue is such a big deal is because there's no middle class. It's basically you either have a lot of money or you're dirt
Yeah.
poor.
Hmm.
But most of the tourist areas, you're not gonna see those neighborhoods that are just dilapidated and just
Yeah.
unless
Not
you
in
go
the.
on like the township tours
Yeah.
where they take you
Hmm.
around in those
Yeah.
areas, but a lot of them are dangerous. But if you're a tourist going to Camps Bay has $30 million homes
Oh
along
yeah.
the coast.
Coast.
You're
Yeah.
not gonna see that
Yeah. And
problem there.
that's why I was saying earlier that I wanted to get out, not to just see all the nice areas that are considered like the tourist traps. I wanted to also be able to go and experience the areas where the natives live, to get out. I wanted to be able, I mean,
Yeah, I
going
didn't
to
do
South,
that.
being able to go, I'm like, I can't come all the way over here to South Africa and not go visit a township. And in my case, I actually visited 4 different townships. And that was in Cape Town alone. And then when I went to Johannesburg, I also visited Soweto, which is, very popular township as well. So that's just me though, but I just wanted to be able to take it all in.
Yeah, I wasn't about that life.
Yeah, I was.
They-
Yeah, I
like,
was.
with different kind of
No,
weapons.
and here's the thing. We had a tour guide and we went to the townships. I believe it was the first, if not the first day, we went there the second day of our trip. And he took us around and we went to visit this church. But I guess it was like this church also had a school there as well. And the kids were singing to us and we got a chance to walk around in the neighborhood and he took us to a local shop and we got a chance to meet the people who ran that shop and we bought items from them. He took us to like a grocery store there in town. But we also got a chance to go to what we would call here in the United States a bootlegger's house.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of cool. Like being at it, it was they called it a shebeen, I believe, and it was run by this older lady, and like these local men. Like she made the beer right, right outside her shop, and the local people would just come there, and have a drink. So, and we actually also got a chance to go see I guess we would call it probably a witch doctor, which
Ooh.
that felt a little weird. I will say that.
See, you play
I
too
was
much.
like, I was like, okay, now that was the only part of the trip that I felt like I don't feel comfortable being here. They don't call it that. I'm using a term I
Yeah.
think that Americans would probably use, but they would probably use the term like a natural healer or something like that. But that to me was a little uncomfortable. But that was probably the only part of that tour of the local township that made me a little bit uncomfortable.
I didn't take as many risks, but I did kind of get out amongst the people. Like there were some good relationships. I remember just speaking with the Uber driver, right? And I just had the Uber driver just hang with us like the whole day. So he kind of took us and he kind of surprised us, took us certain places and stuff like that. And even with the penguin colony thing that you were talking about, he was telling us, all right, so basically the way they set it up, you go one way and you can only view them from a platform. But if you go around the other way and climb over the rocks, you get actually on the beach
Yeah,
with them.
that's what we did.
Yeah, we kind of climbed over rocks and cheated a little bit. I saw everyone else do it. I was like, man, I'm finna get on this beach with the penguins. So from that standpoint, it was cool just, walking amongst and I remember the one thing I know is I stuck out like a sore thumb. Like for some reason I had this thought in my head that I was gonna see some type of kindred spirit or relate come back in Africa. Hey, my American brother. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you don't know me
Yeah.
from anything. Hey, my American
But-
brother. And then he'll ask a friend like, hey, where he from? America. Just like that. Just from the way I looked.
And because you hadn't, it wasn't because they heard you speak.
No.
Okay.
They from a mile away. Hey, my American. I stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
All of us did. We all stuck out.
But I think too is probably the way that we, probably dress and just a certain way to. I don't know. I'm sure. I think when you go to other any place you go to visit, I mentioned to you at one point I went to Cuba, and when I was in Cuba, I'm just out there walking. But I will say I was the only black person in a group of. It was 14 of us, and I was the only black person in my group. And all the Cubans were like, because a lot of them were, black Afro-Cubans, I guess. And they were like, oh, Americano. So I didn't get that in South Africa as much. But when I went to Cuba, I definitely, and I'm like, how do they know I'm from America? They hadn't said a word, but they all I guess they just knew that we were visiting, and our group was visiting from America.
Now, I think one thing you told me a while back that kind of made me think was that when they talked about Africa and where we came from, it was like we didn't come from South Africa.
Oh, yeah. So what happened
We
was.
came from the Gold Coast.
Yeah, well, I flew out of Dulles, and we flew South African Airways, and we got there really early because we took a flight from Atlanta to Dulles, and so we had to wait hours to get on our flight. So we happened to meet someone who was headed to Senegal because the flight we were taking, the flight was flying directly from Dulles to Senegal and then on to Johannesburg. So we were just chatting with the guy who was sitting there with us. It was 3 of us, and we were just sitting there talking. And he was like, so why are y'all headed to South Africa? Your roots are in West Africa.
Yeah.
And so I thought about it, and I couldn't do anything but laugh. And he was really encouraging us, like, you need to, think about coming to West Africa.
Yeah.
And so I haven't made it to West Africa yet, but it's definitely on my top
we
list.
talked about it.
Yes,
I
yes.
told
I
you.
really want to go. So, yeah.
So, as far as the safari experience, do you remember who you chose for that safari
I
experience?
don't remember the name of the company, but I did my safari while staying in Johannesburg and not in
Gotcha.
Cape Town.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was searching, I definitely wanted to do the safari, and I think it was Aquila. I think they were like maybe 2 hours outside of Cape Town. There's some, I think there was like a big. How many were there? There's maybe like 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 big safaris. I know the big one is on the opposite
That's
side
Kruger. Kruger. I
yeah,
think
that
Kruger
one.
is the big one.
Kruger is the big one. Aquila is close to Cape Town, maybe 2 hours outside. This is how I ended up exploring all of Cape Town because I wanted to get that Aquila work in that safari. And I found on this, I think it was like 200 per person, 250 for the experience I wanted. But I found a city pass that had it
Oh,
included all the museums and everything
Yeah.
for $200.
Oh, that was good.
Including that safari. So I'm like, you mean to tell I can pay $250 for one ticket to Aquila, or I can pay $250 for access to the bus system,
Oh, yeah.
all the safaris. I mean, all the museums and that safari for $250, and that's how I ended up
So that
getting
was a
access to all the
no-brainer.
museums. Yeah, and I ended up going to the Castle of Good Hope, all of that, and then we had the access to the bus, and the
Oh,
bus
yeah.
would pick us up right outside of Kemps Bay, right outside, and
Okay.
on that little route.
Yeah. Was that one of the big buses?
Yeah, the city tourist bus.
Okay.
Like that's the other thing that I noticed. Transportation. They didn't have like a subway system or anything
Yeah,
like that.
we so in Cape Town we stayed I think it's called Long Street, and that was one of the like big commercial and then check this out. So
To me, that's like that it's a tourist area.
Yeah.
But based on my research, that's where everybody was getting robbed at.
but that's where all the tourists are, I guess. So
Yeah.
they know that if you're traveling that far, you probably got, they in their mind they're probably thinking you got some disposable income. So, but we stayed, and it was my first time doing Airbnb, and like I said, this was 4 years ago.
Mhm.
So we booked a condo. We booked a condo right on Long Street, and so like a few doors down was the big bus. I think it was the big bus company because we basically got around a lot, just to hop on, hop. I say hop. Some
That's
people
the
call them
same
the
bus I'm
hop on,
talking
hop
about.
off buses. So that's basically how we got around. Now we did have tour guides a few days during our trip, but if we were just going somewhere local, like to Table Mountain or whatever, we would just hop on one of those buses and just, and that was pretty convenient because we were literally right there at the bus
Bus
stop.
stop.
Yeah.
So before I went to Cape Town, when I was doing my research, now I remember it was a black couple, and they were on YouTube and they were describing their experience, and I'm researching, and they described it as a clean LA. That's how they
They,
described
they
Cape Town.
described Cape Town. Oh,
So when I got there and I saw certain parts, and I was like, oh, I can see that. But then I saw other parts, and I was like, this reminds me of Miami. Or I saw this part, and I was like, the Long Street area, I was like, this reminds me of New Orleans, like the French
Yeah.
Quarter area.
yeah.
I was seeing different parts of Cape Town that reminded me of different places. Did you see anything like that?
Um, I don't think that stood out to me. That I wouldn't say that stood out to me as much. I think I was so I was just so the thing that just got me so much was just seeing the beautiful scenery and how, and I mean, like the condo we stayed in,
Mhm.
like walking out on a balcony, Table Mountain was right behind. Like you can walk out and there's Table Mountain. And I was like, wow. So I got caught up in all of that. And then remember I think along the Cape Peninsula, they had it was like this beautiful mountainous region. And I think they called it the 12 Apostles. So those were things, I guess for me, I kind of was looking at, okay, because I didn't really compare it to back home per se, because I was just so caught up
Yeah.
in how beautiful it was and how I felt like it was one of the most beautiful places that I've been to.
The part of town I stayed in was Camps Bay. And it was, the reason I picked it because it was the safest neighborhood and it was the richest neighborhood.
Yeah. And the beach is right there,
And
too.
the beach is right there.
Yeah.
But here's the other part of it. So there's different parts along that coast. So like you got, I think it's like Seaport area, I think, or Cliffs neighborhood or whatever. But it sits right alongside that mountain.
Oh, yeah.
And
Mhm.
the thing that I remember at night, the winds would come coming off that mountain,
Oh, yeah.
and it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like the resurrection.
Oh,
Like it sounds like Like that wind just
The wind,
killing,
yeah.
and they have to soundproof some of the homes because that
Oh, I didn't
wind
think
coming
about
off of
that.
that.
Yeah.
And then I remember the tourist guide describing the power of that wind coming off that mountain. We're going around the coast, coming back towards like the V&A waterfront area and everything, and there's trees that are like leaning
Just
over.
yeah, almost like the storm is moving through. Yeah.
It's just kind of all these. It feels like Cape Town was just this place of natural
It
wonders
was. I
that
mean,
just
yeah.
hasn't
Oh, I
been.
should say it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. One of the things, speaking of winds, my only regret about my trip is that I did not get a chance to go to the top of Table Mountain because the winds were too strong. And I think we tried 2 days to go up, and they would not take those cable cars up
Yeah.
because the winds were just too strong.
I missed out on Robin Island.
Oh, you did? Was
We
because of
bought a
that?
ticket.
Yeah.
Every time we came back up there, they were saying the waters were just too
Too choppy. Yeah.
too rough. So
Yeah.
I didn't get
But you
to.
did make it to the top of Table Mountain? Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No comment. No comment. Because I know somebody's gonna watch this video and have something to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
So no comment.
No comment. Okay.
But everything else, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So do you see yourself going back?
Oh gosh.
I mean,
I'm like, when can I go? I would love to go
there's
back.
so many things on my list, but man, that feels like I gotta
Yeah.
put that right back
But
up. Like I
yeah.
gotta go back.
It was, I mean, like I went to so 2015 I went to South Africa, like I said. So the year before that, I went to London and Paris and thoroughly enjoyed both of those cities. I mean, especially I would say I enjoyed London more than Paris. Um, but I still say they don't compare to Cape Town.
See, you just named 3 of like my favorite cities. So like there's so many places I want to go, but then there's certain places that leave kind of a lasting impression where you're like, you have a list, but you're like, all right, we got to put this back on
Oh
this
yeah. Oh
list
yeah.
and go
Yeah.
back. And that's one of them. I just didn't enjoy the flight.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't enjoy the flight. If I go back, it has to be like I have to spend the extra money to just sit up in
To
extra
get
class.
to get like a business
Business class
class
or
or
a
first
ticket.
class or something.
And it's weird because I flew out of DC too. It went from Atlanta to DC and then DC to Munich and then from Munich
Oh,
to
from Munich. Okay.
and then all the way. And that trip from Munich all the way down to South Africa,
How many hours was it?
it was over 10. It was like 11. And that
Oh,
and that's when it stood out to me. I'm like, Africa is huge. Like it
oh
only
yeah.
takes USA going the long way. Atlanta to LA is what, 5 hours?
Yeah. Yeah.
To get from the
it's
top
like,
of
yes.
it took 10 hours to get from the top of
Oh yeah,
to the
because
bottom.
when like I told you, we flew out of Dulles. So we flew from Dulles to Senegal.
Mm-hmm.
That was 8 hours. And we flew from Senegal we flew from the capital of Senegal to Johannesburg, and that was another 8 hours. So another 8 hours to go from West Africa to South Africa. And and the thing is we had that one stop from flying from DC to all the way from DC to Johannesburg with the 1 hour stop layover we had. It was a 17-hour flight. And here's the thing, even with that 1 hour layover, we could not get off the plane. They would not let us deboard.
What?
No, we had to stay. So when we arrived in Senegal, the people who were getting off there, they got off and they had a crew. They came on and kind of freshened things up or whatever, and took them about an hour, and we were on our way
I
again.
hung out in Munich for like a day. Like it was like 8, 9, 10-hour layover.
Oh wow.
But I
Okay.
wanted it like that to break
Yeah.
it up and go in and
Mhm.
explore. And I left Atlanta like after work and then went to DC and then left DC at like midnight. So that was a break. Like I
Like right.
went out to eat and hang out with friends and then left at midnight to get on the plane.
Well, I think the way that I think I psyched myself out because I have a coworker who's from South Africa, And she would always tell us that whenever she went home, she would stay at least 2 weeks because it takes so long to get there. So when I realized how long it was going to take us to get there, I just psyched my mind out and was like, you know what? I'm just going to be traveling for an entire day.
Yeah.
And really, it was. I mean, it took us 17 hours from Dulles to Johannesburg. And then we also have to add in the time it took to fly from Atlanta to Washington, D.C. And then once we got to Johannesburg, we went to Cape Town. So that was another 2 hours to get from Cape Town to from Johannesburg to Cape Town. So all in all, it was about 20 hours or more.
On trips like that, and I probably shouldn't say this, but me and my friend, we talk about this all the time. I took drugs. I took NyQuil to knock me out. So because I feel like, man, all these people, I'm going to be stuck in this plane and all these people going to be coughing and get drunk. So usually I take airborne and shake it up and drink it or something like that. But on a flight like that, I'm trapped on this plane with all these sick people. Gonna be sneezing and coughing everywhere and then touching your seat. So I took a NyQuil and just tried to sleep through
Well,
it.
here's the thing. So the flight I was on, especially after the people in Senegal, after they got off the flight, there were so many empty rows.
Oh, so you could just
literally, like I was in the middle and there were probably like 5 seats in that one row. So we were able to just kind of stretch out as much as possible and kick back. And, we still had 8 more hours to go. So, yeah.
And it was amazing. The other thing I noticed on that flight, I was looking around, just trying to see if anybody looked like me. And
Oh.
I'm like, man,
Well,
I'm all alone. Like, oh my God.
I've noticed that a lot. That when I travel, like different places, that a lot of I'm gonna say this. So when we were in Cape Town, we went to this wonderful restaurant called, I think it was called the Gold something. I'm sorry, I forgot the exact name, but they served like a 14-course meal, and they served food from different parts of the continent. And they also had a drum before we sat down to eat, we did drum lessons. And so me and my friend who went, we were the only 2 Black people, who were part of the tour, tourists, right? Everyone else were mostly white, I would say. And I think there was one maybe Asian family. And so you're looking around and you're like, gosh, there are no other Black people here who are touring, like we're the only 2 who are tourists. I mean, in our group, but there were quite a few people in that restaurant, but we were literally the only Black tourists in that restaurant.
Here's the thing that stuck out to me, and maybe because I was in the tourist areas, but that's also significant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I remember, all right, so here's backstory. So I always wanted to go to Africa, but watching Black Panther put the battery in my back. So that
really?
February,
Oh, so that,
I remember I posted
okay.
in February, I was like, I'm going to Wakanda. That's what I remember putting. It was that February. And I said, before the end of the year, I'm going. And I didn't know how I was going to fit it in. I had like a whole bunch of vacations already planned. I was trying to figure out how I was going to fit it in. But within the year, I did go because the movie came out in February. No, it wasn't within the year. That February and then March of this year, I went.
Oh, okay.
So February last year and then March of this year, I went to South Africa. When I got there, I was like, man, I left Wakanda to not come to Wakanda because Atlanta is Wakanda.
Oh,
and
yeah.
in theory, because when I got to Camps Bay, when I went to all the restaurants, all the shops and stuff, none of us owned them.
But I think that
And
it's
the people who were sitting down eating
yeah.
was none of us. I'm
Oh,
the
yeah.
only one that was
I
sitting there
believe it.
eating.
Yeah.
Some of the servers were,
Yeah.
but all of us,
Yeah.
none of
But
us were in the
I say,
restaurant.
but
that
you-
was the
you-
tourist areas.
yeah, but you also have to keep in mind that apartheid in South Africa only ended like in the 90s. So that's really not long ago. And think about here in America, how, when we think about the years of Jim Crow, and that's not that long ago. But look, think about it. Like in America, Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Act and all those things that happened in the 60s, like that ended in the 60s, voting rights, Civil Rights Act, all of those things. And you fast forward from the 60s to now, and some people will argue that even we as Black Americans have not made as much progress as we should, right? And that was in the 60s.
But that's this.
This was in the
recent
90s,
yeah.
right? So it's going to take more time
But
to see,
but it's just the thought process, because I think in our head, a lot of us here, we have the thought that Africa is where to go. Like when the GDP, like for example, South Africa, I think has the second highest GDP in the entire continent. I think Nigeria has number one. But with that being said, Georgia still has a higher GDP than South Africa.
Yeah.
Like,
but that nation, when you think about just South Africa, that nation, they were punished by the entire, well, most places in the world because of apartheid.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the whole,
it's going to take time for Africa to fit what we think it is in our heads. 'Cause I think when we're sold this thought of Wakanda, this place of riches, the resources are rich. But that doesn't mean that we own all the resources.
Yes. But that's also why I said to you, like when I went there, I wanted to understand, to get a better understanding of not just, I didn't want to come there to say, only to say, oh, I went to Cape Town and it was beautiful. I also really wanted to learn more about the history. And I felt like I got that. I was able to visit like the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg. And
well, there's, what's the name of it? There's one in Cape Town.
District 6?
District 6 Museum, yeah. That's where I went.
Yeah. So I wanted to learn just what, and I will say our tour guides, they're native, they were natives of South Africa. So they were really able to give us a lot of the history and also current problems, things that they're still dealing with right now. I remember one of our tour guides when we were in Johannesburg, he was telling us how after apartheid, he took us downtown Johannesburg. And we got a chance. Now, I will say I did feel a little unsafe being in the downtown area of Johannesburg because he had a gun.
Yeah.
And he told us, he's like, don't worry, I got a gun. And I'm like, a gun? Like, why do you have a gun, But he was telling us that after apartheid ended, and people started flooding into Johannesburg looking for economic opportunities. But it wasn't just local people. He said people from all over the continent of Africa started flooding into Johannesburg, looking for work, looking for, an opportunity at a better life. So I have to take all of those things into consideration when I go places. Like I really do want to learn about put it like this. When I went to South Africa, now, going to other places, I might go just for the fun of it, right? But for South Africa and its rich history and all that they've been through, I really wanted to learn about.
But you get both. You get the fun,
you get the fun,
beauty, and you get the history
you get the culture
lessons.
and all that. Yeah.
That's why I think this had to be the first episode, because we could literally talk forever. It's so much depth.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to it. And it's so much, because it's one thing to say, oh, it's beautiful, this and that, but it's so much history, so much depth. And there were so many things that going into it, these pre-existing thoughts of what Africa was going to be. Yeah. Now, Africa is a huge continent. You can't equate what you see in Cape Town or South Africa to the rest of Africa.
Yeah.
But even going to South Africa, there were just so many thoughts of what to expect, what I've heard as an American over here versus what I saw when I got there.
Yeah.
And it's so much. So let's see. The other thing that stood out to me, the conversion rate of money.
Oh gosh, I love that.
That was so I think for anyone who's thinking about going and they think about expensive places to travel, less expensive places to travel, that was one. I remember so we were high up on the side of the mountain as far as Camps Bay. It kind of overlooks the ocean. And you can walk down to the main strip, or we were taking Uber rides, depending on how dark it was. But the reason we had no problem taking Uber rides, some of the Uber rides was coming up like $1.50.
Oh yeah,
$2.
Yeah. It was like when I visited South Africa and then made it back home to the the U.S. I said when I was sharing my experience there, right? I said, well, if you can afford the flight to get over there, you're good because once you're over there, everything is like super cheap, I mean, compared to here, right? Because even like I said, we stayed in this beautiful condo overlooking Table Mountain for 7 days. And the total for 7 days was like 900 that we split 2 ways. So I'm like $400, like, wow.
I think
like,
our Airbnb was like $480 for like 5 or 6 days.
5 or 6. Okay. Yeah.
And
yeah, but then even speaking of the V&A, that area, the waterfront, we had the food was amazing. And I'm like, okay, this same meal back home would cost like $60 or so
and it's a dope
or
mall too.
more.
That's a big.
Yeah, but we had some of the best food. And I mean, everything was so reasonable. I'm like, wow, that's it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that to me, again, of course, the flight to me was the most expensive part of the trip. I think I spent $13 for a round trip ticket. And we had been researching. You probably got a better deal.
Want to hear it?
I don't want to know. Look, I'm probably going to be mad, but how much?
500.
Wow, that was awesome. We spent 13, but we went in, I guess we went during the springtime because it was the springtime for them.
Yeah, it's because the seasons are flipped.
Yeah.
So our March is there like August. So it was like the end of summer over there.
Yeah, we got there it was late September, and I don't quote me, but I think it was their springtime. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man, so there was one more question I had. Anything else stood out?
Wow.
Well, there's a lot, but I mean,
it was a lot that stood out to me.
one more story.
Yeah.
One more story. Coolest thing in the world, and it was the most expensive because you said cheap, and I thought about, well, this one got me. So I wanted a Modiba shirt. Whatchamacallit? Not a...
What, a dashiki? Not dashiki.
Yeah, I wanted a dashiki, but the kind of shirts that Mandela was wearing, like the silk, I think they call them Modiba shirts.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So Nelson Mandela had a personal stylist that did those shirts. That personal stylist opened up their own store. And I think they had 2 in Cape Town.
Oh, okay.
One of them was in the VA waterfront.
Okay.
And I got me a Modiba shirt. The same person that did all of Nelson Mandela's silk shirts.
Shirts, yeah.
I got one for me and my brother.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And that was the most expensive purchase in the world. Because they charged up the yin-yang for that shirt.
Oh, really?
Yes. Like it was a couple hundreds for a shirt.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was the dopest experience.
Yeah.
And I hope my brother cherishes that shirt for the rest of his life.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope he never...
Yeah.
He told me he wasn't going to ever take it
so
out of the rapper.
So that was a splurge. That was your biggest splurge?
But it was just... I'm like... And then I got my mom a garb or whatever that... But it wasn't like the silk shirt. It was something...
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it was just cool to say, okay, the same person that designed the shirts for Nelson Mandela personal...
Yeah.
We got something from
Yeah, because I know this wasn't Cape Town, but it was Johannesburg. We went to what was Nelson Mandela's former home that they had turned into a museum. So on that one street was like, we went inside the home. We got a chance to tour the home, and that same street, Desmond Tutu lived right down the street from him, right down the street from where the museum is. And I was just like, wow, like this one street is so full of history. You got, Mandela's home here, and Desmond and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu lives right down the street. So it was just really, because it's one thing like when you hear these stories about these famous people and to actually be standing like in the place where they actually lived, where they slept, whatever. And it's just I don't know, it's just one of those things that you're like, wow, I'm really here. Like, to me, that's just like something that you'll never forget about,
I got to go back.
Yeah.
I have other places planned, but man, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, well, I said, I definitely have to go back because I never made it to the top of Table Mountain. So for that reason alone, I have to go back.
All right, we'll figure something out. I'm going to look up some stuff. Okay. I think I can catch that deal again.
Well, I need to, so you went in March, you say, right? In March?
Weather was perfect.
So what March for them is that their Is that the
It's the end of summer for them.
end of summer? Okay.
They're getting
Okay.
so it's kind of like our August. They're getting ready to go into fall weather after that. So I'm
Oh
catching them like
yeah.
August,
Okay.
equivalent of August
Yeah,
weather.
yeah. Okay. Well, that was
So
good.
yeah, so you still had the warm weather. It was shorts weather, t-shirt and short.
Yeah, it was a little chilly because we were, right there along the beach and all. So it was, but yeah, but the weather though, it was overall, it was beautiful. It was nice. Yeah. So
Like
everything
literally, I'm
about
walking around. There's camp like the Cape of Good Hope, and there's like literally an ostrich walking outside
oh
my
yeah,
car and
oh
stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Like it's crazy.
We went to we like I said, we toured some of the wineries in in that region as well. And I never forget like one of the places we were outside having lunch. And there was we were having lunch in and it's a huge vineyard. And of course, like animals just running around, like, just like you never knew what you were going to see or what was going to pop up because, that was just part of the entire experience. So, yeah, so I enjoyed it to say the least.
So what's your next trip
Well, speaking of West Africa, I'm still trying to get to
to
Ghana,
Ghana? Yeah.
Ghana or Senegal.
All right. Well, man, we will probably keep going. Thank you so much. I
Well,
really appreciate this conversation. I knew that this had to be the first episode, and I held on to it. I did other episodes and the other episodes, but I said this has to be the first one.
well, I'm glad you invited me. And again, like maybe we can come back and talk about another trip at some point. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So thank you.
All right, thank you, and that will conclude this episode. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe, tell your friends, share. Got more videos on the way.